I'll be hosting today's Tech Tuesday Demo Days call. I'm a senior technical sales specialist on the cloud platform team for the Southeast National Market under the guidance of Roger Snook, who I hope is not on the call and is enjoying his vacation. I'm happy to introduce today's presenter, Zach Henkels. He's a colleague and teammate of mine. He's been on the cloud platform team for about 2 years now. Zach's an avid gamer when he's not on the clock, and he enjoys writing and developing video games in his spare time. So without further ado, Zach, let's learn about Power Systems Virtual Servers.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Mike. I appreciate it. And hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the call today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So can I just get a quick confirmation, Mike, from you that you can see the screen?
Looks good. Yep, we can see it.
Sweet. All right. So as Mike said, yeah, my name is Zach Henkels. I've been with IBM now and specifically working with cloud for a little over 2 years now. And today I will be presenting IBM Power Virtual Servers for IBM Cloud, otherwise known as IBM Power VS. Oh, maybe. There we go. So some of the topics that I'll be discussing today are simply giving an overview of IBM Power Systems and IBM Power VS, discussing some challenges that we see faced in today's market, as well as going over why IBM Power VS and furthering that with why IBM Power VS and SAP with SAP HANA. And then to close things out for today, I'll be going over some use cases for Power VS that might pique your interest, as well as giving a pretty interesting demo, if I do say so myself. So with that, let's get started. Power Systems. Now, as you can see, this is actually the hardware side of things, but IBM Power Systems are engineered for agility, with the capability to respond faster to business demands, as well as maximize availability and reliability. And with both Power Systems and IBM Power VS, they both provide a frictionless hybrid cloud experience. Okay. So IBM Power Systems Virtual Server. Now this is the cloud side of things, as I like to call it. So with the IBM Power Systems family, our servers all support AIX, IBM I, and Linux through VMware-based virtual machines as a service, which is pretty interesting. And with IBM Power VS, IBM actually manages up to the OS, the operating system deployment, but then past that, the client would actually self-manage the OS and up. But as with everything in life, that actually depends. So if you do want IBM to manage more than just up to the OS deployment, that is something that we do have the capability of doing. And to further look at Power VS, I do just want to point out a few things when it comes to the systems that we currently have, as well as the compute capabilities and the storage type. So with the systems, we currently have our Power 9 series, which includes the S922 and the E980, and coming soon, I'm not sure with an exact date on that, apologies, but the E1080 is actually coming soon as well, and this is something that will be first deployed Power 10 on-prem, then it will be available in the cloud. Next, I just want to take a quick look at the compute capabilities of Power Systems across the board. Now, most of the time with compute capabilities and the number of cores, you're looking at increments of 1, 2, 4, or larger chunks of cores that you'll need to use. Interestingly enough, with Power VS, you actually can increment your core size in a fourth of a core, which is something that, at least to my understanding, is very unique and very different. Most of the time, you are not able to say, I want one and 1/4 of a core for the dev test environment, let's say, that I'm looking to run. So next, let's look at some challenges specifically focusing around modernizing critical workloads and existing IT infrastructure. So with modernization comes the need to be ready for unpredictable demand, which will require dynamic and efficient scaling. When it comes to being ready for cybersecurity risks, that requires pervasive layered security. when you need to be ready for AI-driven applications. This requires data access and privacy. And last but certainly not least, and this is primarily thanks to COVID, with modernization, you need to be ready for an anywhere workplace, or the idea of I can work at home, I can work on the train, I can work anywhere. And that requires IT flexibility. Now, taking this one step further, focusing really on the security side of things, this is specifically for the, excuse me, the Power 10 on the hardware side currently, but I did just want to highlight a few things regarding Power 10 and its capabilities. The first being the end-to-end security with full stack encryption, as well as memory encryption as a whole. So all data in memory is actually encrypted. And with Power 10, this is actually the first time I believe we can say that this is that we're using quantum safe cryptography as well. And when comparing the Power 1080 to the E980, Power 10 to Power 9, we're actually seeing about 2 times faster performance per core when you go from the 980 to the 1080. All right, so that's a little bit of background on IBM Power and IBM Power VS. But the question comes down to, how can IBM Power Systems Virtual Server help you? So let's start with business continuity planning. Think of this as if you're looking for a cloud configuration as a reliable failover option. So with IBM Power VS, you have backup options, high availability, and disaster recovery options. This allows for reduced CapEx, as well as a flexible disaster recovery capacity. Next, we have data center strategy optimization. And this really comes down to the capability to grow quickly and on demand. Once again, I'd like to just come back to the idea of flexibility through and through with Power VS. So here we have things like rehosting. Your architecture can be aligned with on-premises certified stacks. You actually can maintain your ISV certifications and support. And finally, as I just mentioned, this allows you to grow quickly, accelerate time to value, as well as have geographic expansion. Third in this list is we have modernize or modernization. And when you think about modernization, you're looking at how applications and processes can be migrated to more advantageous and flexible models. And one piece I'd like to bring up here is specifically with applications and modernization. Think of it as going from a monolithic view of the application where everything's basically baked in one thing, to breaking those pieces apart, going and getting rid of this monolithic view. So within modernization, we have the increased business agility, and you are actually able to connect to over 200 IBM Cloud services. And we also have cloud integrated APIs that easily integrate to existing tools. So if you are used to using something, think of these APIs as more of an enhancement than anything. And with modernization, you can actually start with a dev test environment. So if you're not sure how many cores you need, how much storage you need, or what this potential new application will need, we can help you and just stand up a dev test environment and allow you to play around with IBM Power VS and see what the capabilities are and see what you will need in the future. And finally, operational excellence and cost optimization. And this really comes down to a pay-as-you-go model with flexible billing. So there's no upfront, there's no bulk charge at the beginning. It's, I've used this much data, let's say, or this many CPUs for this month. We'll only charge you for that. We won't bump up the price or anything like that. So as you can see, there's also ease of use, or ease of technology upgrade and supported software, the pay-as-you-go billing, as I just mentioned, and improved self-service and response time, off-hours coverage. So And now to just quickly point out a few things with this, this frictionless hybrid cloud approach that we have. So as you can see here, we have Power on-prem and IBM Power in the cloud. And with this hybrid approach, one piece that I would like to stress is that there's no additional middleware or application refactoring required if you do take the hybrid cloud approach. And in addition to the hybrid cloud approach, this actually allows you to extend workloads across on-premises and Power Virtual Servers. Next, we'll be talking about SAP HANA, something that I'm still in the midst of learning more about, but it is very interesting. It's very exciting for me, at least, to say that we're the only company that is SAP certified with cloud instances on Power, as well as SAP HANA and NetWeaver instances on Power. Excuse me. And with that being said, IBM is actually your one-stop shop for SAP and SAP HANA. We are actually certified. We're certified for SAP on our bare metal servers, VMware, and virtual servers. So if you do have an SAP workload and you are not sure which infrastructure to go with or what you would be more comfortable with, we do support what you can see here on screen currently. And the hope is that this list will continue to grow in the future. And to wrap things up when it comes to SAP and SAP HANA, I'd like to just quickly draw attention to the responsibility matrix on the right. And this breaks down essentially who manages what when you're looking at the as a service stack, as I like to call it. So here highlighted the infrastructure side of things. IBM manages up to, as I stated before, the deployment of the OS, but then from there up, you would be managing it. But as you can see, the further to the right that we move, IBM will manage more and more of the of your SAP environment. And as stated before, this is something that can be simply discussed of what are you comfortable with managing and what would you prefer that we as IBM would manage. So now to bring it back to why IBM Power Systems Virtual Server, and these are just some key points that I'd like to once again reiterate that I have previously discussed, and some of these are new. But to start, IBM Power VS is available in 15 data centers across the globe, and we've had over 450 clients deploy IBM Power VS for production workloads, high availability and disaster recovery, as well as dev test environments. And just to reiterate some key solutions here, IBM Power VS supports AIX, IBM I, Linux, as well as SUSE and Ubuntu Linux. Red Hat, as I just stated. And then as we just saw on the previous few slides, once again, I would like to just reiterate, we are SAP certified as well as SAP NetWeaver certified. And this also extends into our IBM Cloud packs as well. Now on the right side, we can see comprehensive security and compliance. So we are HIPAA compliant, ISO 27K compliant, as well as GDPR and LGPD compliant. And as I stated before as well, security and compliance pieces will also be coming in the future to our Power 10. So now I'd like to take a deeper dive into the 4 use cases that I mentioned earlier, and the first being business continuity planning. So when it comes to business continuity planning, who is this really for? Well, it's for clients with mission critical workloads that cannot fail or can have zero downtime, they're on premises, you're on-prem, and you're looking for a hybrid cloud solution, or you're looking to go partially off-prem, and give some of that, or allow IBM to have some of that reliability as well. And here, so why IBM Power VS when it comes to business continuity planning? Well, with IBM Power VS, you're able to seamlessly move and manage workloads across cloud and on-prem environments. Oh, and I just saw a note from Mike. Mike, did you just want to quickly?
I was just adding
note
some
on-
commentary to what SAPs were, and the fact that Power 10 was just SAP certified, so that SAP's world record will actually go up with the new Power 10 system. So I was just adding some commentary behind the scenes.
Oh,
That's it.
Thanks, Mike. Cool. Well, that's really good to know. But to continue on, let's look at the second use case, which was data center strategy and optimization. So now, who is this for? This is for clients with mission critical workloads that cannot fail or have any downtime, similar to the previous slide. But they're also clients or companies who are looking to offload data center responsibility either entirely or partially to IBM. And this is also for clients who are seeking ease of business expansion. So if you're looking to go fully into the cloud, that's something that IBM can manage, and it takes a little bit of the weight off your shoulders when it comes to just data center concerns. And so why Power VS when it comes to data center strategy and optimization? So there's the SAP certification, as we just talked about, and as Mike just chimed in. We were just certified, SAP certified for Power 10, which is very exciting. But we also have support for Oracle, deep power and cloud skills in IBM. And then with data center strategy optimization, this will also allow for a broad geo footprint. The third piece, or the third use case that I'm going to expand upon, is modernize or modernization. So this is for clients or customers who are currently on premises and they're looking to modernize, whether that's a split between on-prem and in the cloud, or move all of their mission critical workloads into the cloud. This is also for clients who are reaching software or hardware end of life or end of support, as well as those who want to develop, upgrade, and test new software, as well as hardware performance. Think back to the dev test environment that we're able to stand up for you, or you can actually stand up yourself and just poke and prod around with the Power VS and see what is possible currently, what can be possible in the future. And finally, for those with an interest in deploying containers as well as VMs. So when it comes to modernization, why should you think IBM Power VS? Well, simply put it, it's easy to move to QA and production. There's the flexibility and agility that I briefly touched on earlier, as well as the client-paced modernization. When working with IBM, we will move at your pace, and not force anything along. If it's you need a little more time in the development stages or things of that nature, we're more than happy to take that time with you. And the final use case is operational excellence and cost optimization. So who is this for? And this all does stem around Power VS. It's not like there's a specific Power VS machine that's specifically focused on operational excellence and cost optimization. I do want to make that very clear as well. But this is just a single use case of Power VS. So this would be for those who currently are running Power 7 or Power 8 hardware and looking to make that upgrade to Power 9 or Power 10 in the future. This is also for clients who are looking to reprioritize internal resources and skills, as well as clients that are reaching the software or hardware end of life or end of support. And most importantly, or a very key piece of this as well, since we're talking about cost optimization, is shifting from CapEx to OpEx. And when it comes to operational excellence and cost optimization, why should you think IBM Power VS? Well, it's because it's the same experience on premises and off premises. It's really just where it's located. There's once again the flexibility and agility that comes with the cloud and IBM Cloud in this hybrid environment that you can create. And once again, to reiterate, we do have that client-paced modernization. And just one use case that I would like to discuss is with, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, IPTOR. And normally I would just spell this out, but they are a supply chain, or IPTOR Supply Chain Systems. They're a supply chain management company that provides professional services and enterprise resource management software for distributors and wholesalers. And the challenge that they were faced with is that they've been using IBM for a long time, IBM I for a long time, and wanted a solution that could be cloud native as well as IBM I and increase speed to market. So the solution when working with IPTOR was to use IBM Power Systems VS running Red Hat Enterprise Linux to rapidly and cost-effectively extend its infrastructure resources. And the unique value here and that IPTOR found was that we're able to expand to other geos. And the question too comes down to why IBM I? Well, the IBM I requirements are the same as on-premises, so you'll see no difference between the cloud or on-prem. You can also have an on-premises and cloud data center. And the final piece is that it took 6 months to onboard in Copenhagen. With Power VS, it only took 1 week, which, I mean, if you ask me which sounds better, 6 months to onboard or 1 week, well, I would absolutely pick 1 week. So next, I'm going to actually be stepping through a demo of IBM Power VS. So let me go ahead, stop sharing for a brief second, and get to the right page. There we go. Apologies, internet is a little slow right now. There we go. All right, so here we are in the IBM Cloud portal. So what we'll first do is let me just go ahead and view all of the current resources that I have. And here, as you can see, and great, it does highlight. As you can see, I have actually 2 Power VS environments currently stood up, one in Dallas and one in DC. For the purposes of the demo today, we will just be looking at the, as I titled it, demo, and not demo to Power VS environment. So when it comes to provisioning a VSI, there we go. What I'd like to do is just take you through this process of what it looks like to create a VSI. As long as this loads. Okay. My apologies for the internet issue that I'm currently experiencing. This was running fine earlier today as I was getting ready for this. There we go. So when creating a VSI or virtual server instance, you'll go through and give it a name. You can create a maximum of 5 instances at once, which is very interesting and very unique, I would say, as well as VM pinning most of the time. Though when it does come to creating a VSI, we do not select soft or hard pinning. But then from here, and as you can see on the right, as we move across in this summary tab, you will see cost accumulate as we move further and further down in the provisioning process. But here, when it comes to selecting your operating system, here you can see we have AIX, IBMI, and Linux, as mentioned prior, as well as Linux for SAP HANA and Linux for SAP NetWeaver, as well as the client-supported subscription option of Linux. For the purposes of today, we will select AIX as the operating system, and we will select the topmost image. From here, we actually are given the option to select one of 2 different tiers, the first being tier 1, which is at 10 IOPS per gigabyte, and tier 3, which is 3 IOPS per gigabyte. And once again, I would like to reiterate that with IBM Power VS and the IBM Cloud does come flexibility. So if you first initially stand up this VSI and you need, say, tier 1, this switches maybe. Well, if you need the tier 1 at 10 IOPS per gigabyte, that's something you can start out with, let's say, for the first month. And then after that first month, you realize, well, I only need tier 3. You can actually just change the tier itself. And next, we will actually select the machine that we'll be using. And as you can see, currently we support the E880, the E980, and the S922. And in the future, we will also have support for the Power 10 lineup as well. But from here, you have options of core type, whether that's shared uncapped, shared capped, or dedicated. And this has to come down to if cores will be shared with others in the environment or just dedicated to you. And following that, we have core and memory selection. So as you can see by default, you're actually given 0.25 cores to start with. But as you can see the note here, which is due to limited capacity of the S922 specifically, the maximum availability of cores is 3. But this is something, once again, if you don't need to if you don't need a fourth of a core, you can do a half, 3/4, or an entire core. Once again, just bringing it back to that flexibility that comes with it. And the same can be said with memory. So by default, you're at 2 gigabytes of memory, but then with the S92, for right now at least, due to capacity, the maximum is 922 gigabytes of memory. So once we have that selected, and as you can see over here, on the right, under the summary, we have virtual server instance with the name of test. The SSH key is provided, the boot image is provided, but you can see that we chose the AIX operating system. As well as for the profile of this VSI, as you can see, we've selected the IBM Power 9 S922 with an uncapped shared processor at 0.25 cores. And below that, we have the storage volume. So with a boot volume of 20 gigabytes, and then the tier 3 storage option that we selected, which is 3 IOPS per gigabyte. So far, and this is with flexibility in mind as well, the current total estimated cost is not even $50 yet. But then further on in this process, we can actually create storage volumes, which in this process you can see you're actually able to name the volume that you create and size it from 1 gigabyte up to 2 terabytes. as well as select the number of volumes that you'd like this storage to have. And then the tier of storage is actually linked to the tier of storage that we selected earlier when selecting the operating system. For the purposes of this demo, I will not be creating this volume because this might take some time to do. But last is the networking. So with IBM Power VS, you have the option of either adding a private network or a public network. And as long as this works, perfect. So as you can see, I've actually created a private subnet prior to this demo that we can actually use for the creation of this VSI. And then closing things out, you see you need to agree to the terms and conditions, but the total estimated cost right now for what will soon be provisioning is around $47.95 a month, or 7 cents an hour. And then once we click finish here and then create, it will go through the process of creating that VSI. But as you can see, I've already created an additional one just because I don't want to hold people up and potentially have to sit here for a few minutes just for that to come through. But in this other VSI for Power VS that I created, you can see the name of it is TechTuesday-IBM-I. So with this one, I actually went with the IBM I operating system. But everything else that follows is very similar to what we just created. So we have that fourth of a core, 2 gigabytes of memory, and the S922 machine is still being used. And then as we scroll down here, we can see that there's a reference code for when this was actually created. So you can see on August 5th of this year, I'm at 4:24 my time. This was made, and even from here, when looking at the VSIs, we can actually create a new volume, attach a current volume. We can switch between public networks and private networks, and as you can see down here, we see once again the same subnet that I created, which is the test-subnet-power private network. And the last thing that I will point out is I would say the ease of use when it comes to adding virtual appliances, boot images, or subnets. So here with virtual appliances, okay, maybe not this area because this is still loading. Okay, here we go. So with boot images, as you can see currently what I have is an instance of IBM I as well as Linux, both active and both available for us to use. Linux at tier 1 and the IBM iOS at tier 3, as well as the creation of subnets, as I just pointed out as well. From here, process is relatively straightforward. When you create the new subnet, you're able to give it a name, gateway, IP ranges, and then as well as the option for cloud connection. And that's it. Sorry for the awkward pause there. There was something else I wanted to show, but due to my internet issues and time, I will not be able to show it. But that wraps it up for the demo. Just quick step through of really just creating that VSI for IBM Power VS and showing you how, I would say, straightforward it is. But obviously in any of this process, as you're going through it yourself, whether it's poking around or you do work with us, and if you do need any assistance, obviously we are more than happy and able to help you with that. So with that, Mike, I'll actually hand things back to you because I believe we do have a quiz as well coming up.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach.